G'day, this is Paul Rowe. In February 1942, Japanese air ace Captain Mitsuo Fushida led the surprise bombing attack that devastated the US fleet at Pearl Harbour. 10 weeks later, he led the first of 64 attacks on the mainland of Australia around Darwin. When a single uranium bomb vaporised 140,000 residents of Hiroshima, war in the Pacific came to a frightful end. Fushida viewed the desolation the very next day, and he was numbed. The disillusioned samurai withdrew to a solitary life on a farm. The warrior code Fushida had lived by evaporated, and he had deeply troubling questions. How could the human heart be turned from war? How could you escape the cycle of hatred breeding hatred? He began to write a book, No More Pearl Harbour. But the deeper he dug, the more baffled he became. The people of the world must genuinely want peace. This would require nothing short of a complete change of human nature. He despaired of finding a solution. Answers came quietly. First, gladness at the miracle of spring, a gift from the Creator. Then a friend told him of the kindness of a young American girl serving in their prison camp. When they asked why, the reply staggered them. Her parents had been teachers in Yokohama. They were beheaded as spies. They died forgiving their enemies, and she had decided she must do the same. Fushida was thunderstruck. This beautiful story overwhelmed me and made me ashamed, he wrote. One day in 1948, a leaflet was placed in his hands. American airman Jacob DeShazer had crash-landed after a reprisal bombing on Tokyo. Imprisoned and tortured, he developed a fierce hatred for his captors. A New Testament came to him, and by the time he passed it on, he was a changed man. Jesus' life story had delivered him from the bitterness that consumed him. The American returned after the war to share that transformative story with the very people he'd despised. Fascinated, Fushida read it for himself. The breakthrough came with the moment when Jesus cried out from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Surely, the ex-warrior thought, this must be what Peggy Cavell's parents prayed as the samurai's sword flashed down on them. As he bowed and asked God's forgiveness, he knew that Jesus had prayed not only for his persecutors, but for all humanity. Over the next 30 years, the man who led the bombing on Pearl Harbour and Darwin carried the message of how the love of God could turn the human heart away from war and hatred to America. He finished his book. It was titled From Pearl Harbour to Calvary. In 2018 in Darwin, a Japanese envoy expressed their deep remorse for the damage suffered in the bombing. The spirit of reconciliation that changed Peggy Cavell, Jacob DeShazer and Mitsuo Fushida was leaving fresh footprints on Australia. If you'd like to know more about Australia's Christian heritage, go to theoutbackhistorian.com.au. This has been Paul Rowe. I'll catch you down the track.